Hello class, welcome to Module 3. This week we're looking at strings, lists, I/O, and operators. What I want to do to start out here is go over a couple items that I've noticed as I've been grading your assignments that we might want to make some improvements on, or at least I want to just clarify to make sure everybody understands what I'm looking for in some of these things to make the rest of the semester easier. And the first item is doc strings. So in topic 2 of Module 2, you can see there's an item here called comments, doc strings, and comments. And this defines how I would like the beginnings of your programs to look to make sure that first of all I can identify your program easier to make sure I'm grading the correct person's work, as well as having you utilize good practice by defining your program, so when somebody else has to come look at your program, you at least have a short piece of information here at the beginning of it that explains what your program does. So I'm expecting these to be at the beginning of your programs for the rest of the semester. It really only needs to be on your main program. I don't need it on your test file if you don't want to put it there. But at the very least, I need your name, perhaps last day modified, and then I need to have this definition of the program. And a lot of the assignments, if you look at the rubric, it will actually take points off for not including this doc string at the beginning. So it should be one of the first things you do whenever you start your programs. The next item is I noticed on some of the print statements that were being done that you were making it maybe a little bit harder than it needed to be. So I just wanted to show you a few more things with print statements, especially with adjusting the spacing in your print statements that might help you. So I'm just going to look at this example here. So I'm just doing a print statement here, and in this print statement I'm saying print the string something, print the string something else, and print the string some other thing. And if I don't have this at the end here and I run this, you can see that I get something and then a space and then something else and then a space and then some other thing. So by default, when you have these print statements with multiple things in them, the spacing between the items is automatically just a space. So I can override that, and you already saw that, kind of gave away the end there a little bit. If I put sep equals quote quote, that means between each one of the outputs in that print statement it's going to put in no spacing because I'm telling it to put in no spacing. So if I do that, you can see that there's no longer a space here and there's no longer a space here. I don't have to put nothing. I could put a backslash if I wanted to. I have to put a backslash because I picked a poor choice because backslash is an escape character. And you can see, so I'm now escaping the escape character, but you can see now whenever it goes in between the outputs, it puts a backslash in. There are times when this is useful. I think we get into it a little bit when we do file I/O. You know, if you're trying to get things into, like, let's say a standard comma format, comma separated format, you can do that, and you can automatically put commas in between things. I can also do a \n, which I think I spoke a little bit about last week, and when I do that, it automatically puts a new line in between each one of my outputs. So instead of making multiple print statements, there are times when it makes more sense to do something like this. Continuing on, I don't really have a visual necessarily here, but I guess I could just very quickly talk about floor division. I just want to make sure, because some of you seem to still have a little bit of a confusion about what floor division is. And it's just about knowing the way it works, especially on the negative side. So if I have two numbers that I divide, and they don't divide evenly, on the positive side from 0 to infinity, it's always going to round down, essentially truncating off any decimals. However, when it gets negative, it doesn't truncate, it moves to the next smallest number. So if you were looking at the entire spectrum of numbers, it is always going to move one number closer to negative infinity, or you know, if it's a partial in between two integers. So if I have 25 floor division 4, I do that, I get 6 because 24 divided by 4 is 6, and it just takes off the end, which would be 0.25. However, if I have negative 25 divided by 4, I get negative 7 because the result will be negative 6.25, I believe, and that will move it to negative 7. It always moves it closer to negative infinity. So that's just all I wanted to say on that one. And another item is about program order. I did notice that some of you are running your programs in orders that were a little bit unexpected to me. I talked to some of the other instructors, and it turns out that in some other programming languages, the orders are typically different. So there's some reason why I'm seeing that fairly commonly. I just want to make sure everybody has a standard idea of what is typically seen with Python. There obviously are variations there because so many different people use the language for different things, but this is just generally a good way to order your programs. So I just threw together a pseudo program here, and if you look at this, it always starts out with your imports. So if I'm importing a library, I'm importing some other library, and then from this third library I'm importing something. Now these obviously aren't real things, but if I'm importing things, those are always the first things in my program, and they typically should be on their own line. Each import should be on its own line to make it readable. The next thing is if your program has any global constants that are required, you want to put those global constants in next. So I've got days in week 7, weeks in year 52. Those are constants. They're not going to change when I'm using my program. They're not varying with my program, so they're not variables, so they're constants. And you can see I used all uppercase because that's the PEP 8 standard for constants. Once you have those done, later in the semester, we're going to talk about object-oriented programming. You put classes in here, but we don't have any classes yet. So the next thing would be functions. So I've got a couple of fake functions here that I created. I'm creating a function called myFunction, and it has one input parameter, and then I don't really use the input parameter, but it returns some kind of output. I got another function separated by a line to make it more readable again, and it does essentially nothing in this case, but that it also returns an output. And then I'm done with my functions. And now I go down to my main. So people have a hard time remembering this text, and I don't care for it myself the way it's done, but it's if underscore underscore name underscore underscore equals main. And the reason this is here is if your program is imported into another program, this part of the code will not run. Because it is not considered the main program in that case. So that's how that works, and it's especially important when we do unit testing, because what could happen is if I'm unit testing this function and I don't have my main in here, my unit test will continue to attempt to run through the rest of the program, and so you get some weird results, and you don't get what you expect. So you want to have that if name equals main in there after your function section. The easiest way to do this, instead of trying to remember all this text, is PyCharm and Jupyter Notebooks both do this automatically. If I just start typing in main, it automatically tries to autocomplete it for me, and I just choose the first option and I hit enter, and it puts in all that text for me. So the only part you need to remember is main, and the rest of it automatically gets put in. So it makes your life a little bit easier. So yeah, I've got my main section, and then I've got all my code underneath that main section. If I've got some kind of a program variable here, perhaps if I'm taking my user input in my main, it would be here. I would call all my functions, all of the things that the program does. What the main part of the program does goes in this part of the code. I did notice that some of you have done something of this nature, where essentially your main just calls a function called main, and then essentially all your code just lives within that function, and then your main just calls main. You can do this. I did look it up to see how common it is. It is a way that is commonly done. So if you feel more comfortable, you can do that. I typically don't code this way. I keep all of my main program down in my main, and I have my functions at the top. I will accept this because it is a standard way that some people do Python programming. So that's all I wanted to say about that. The other item is on unit tests. I saw several of you put in unit tests and get them working, but you really only put in one test. That's not ever really going to be enough for unit testing your code. Testing your code with only one scenario is not really exercising the different possibilities with that code output. So I can't give you full credit for just doing a single unit test. You need to try a couple of different scenarios to ensure that your code works as expected in those different scenarios. We'll be doing unit testing throughout the semester, but I just want to make sure you're aware of that. If you ever turn in a set of unit tests that just has one test, that's not going to be acceptable. It wouldn't be acceptable in the real world. It won't be acceptable here. So that's all I have on unit tests for now. I'll be going over some more unit testing stuff here in a few moments. But that's in the modules themselves. So this video resides in the main level of the module, and each one of the videos about the topics are now going to be in those topics. I'm going to be recording it all as one, so it might string together a little bit, but you will find each one of the videos under the topics that those videos are about.